Let's recap Lab 2 and then see some more sophisticated ways to write the drawing code that will allow us to have multiple objects on the screen. So here's my Lab 2 version, my MU panel. If I look at this, you notice that I don't have any objects declared or instantiated. I was only working in the paint component method, and I have the house, the roof, the window, and I'm just using the drawing commands with these absolute numbers of where to do things. So the house rectangle is upper left corner is 200, 150. It's 200 wide and 100 high. And then so the window has to be a smaller rectangle that's inside that. Okay, so you did that in Lab 2. And you can see that here's my house and lollipop tree and smiley sun. And the only difference between this and maybe your Lab 2 is that I think I've made my window a little wider, just because you'll see why in a second. All right, so that's my Lab 2. But now, what we often want to do is we would like to have a nice scene with multiple visual objects. So what if we wanted to have a forest of trees, or simulate a planet where there's more than one sun in the sky? Okay, well, to use the approach we used in Lab 2 would be very painful, because the tree, the sun, and the house are all drawn using these absolute numbers, and I had to figure things out on paper. Okay, so to draw another tree in a different location, I'd have to figure out where should I put it and all those kinds of things. So I don't want to do the math in my head. We're using a computer, so why not have the computer do the calculations and work things out like that? Plus, this does not look very much like our first lab where we were working with flag objects, or before that when we were working with the balloon objects, where we had those objects and we could just ask the object, hey object, draw yourself, by calling the draw method. Whereas here for the tree, there's no tree object. We have to have all these numbers and all the individual statements. So if I wanted to have 10 trees, I'd have to copy this code and paste it 10 times. So that's not a good approach. So what we want to do here in this video series to get you ready for Lab 3 is I want to show how could I set up a tree class and a sun class that we could then have objects from the tree and the sun class and ask them to draw themselves. So that's the purpose of what we're going to do. Now, in order to use our own classes, so we're going to now have, like I said, a tree class, a sun class. Okay, it's important to know the structure of a Java class definition. So every class definition starts with a heading. The heading starts with the keyword public, and then we have the keyword class, followed by some class name. It's traditional to capitalize the first letter of the class name. Okay, so we could say public class lollipop tree, or public class smiley sun, or public class flag. Okay, then there's a set of curly braces to mark the beginning and the end of the body of the class definition. Okay, now the body of the class definition, a simple class definition, has 3 sections, or contains 3 things. First of all, remember that the objects have properties. And so the first thing that's going to be in a class definition would be we're going to declare the properties or variables for the objects of the class. So this will set up the storage, the things that the class knows. All right. The second thing that is in a class definition is what's called the constructor method. The constructor method is used when a new object is created from the class. In some other part of the program, we say, hey, I want a new tree, or I want a new flag. And that's when the constructor is invoked. And the purpose of the constructor method, at least at the beginning of the semester here, is we're simply going to set up or store the initial values in some or all of the properties that we declared previously. So here's just going to be a series of assignment statements. We're setting the property equal to the value of a parameter. And when we do that, the properties are displayed in green text, and that goes on the left of the equal sign. So you'll see this in my next video when I'm starting to do this. You'll see how this will work. But the constructor is simply a bunch of assignment statements setting the values of the properties that I declared up here. And then the third part of a class definition would be other methods that we can call. So these are the things we could ask an object of this class to do. And for these visual objects, we're always going to have a draw method. So the heading is going to be public void draw, and then we have this graphics G in here. G is the window or the graphics object in which things will be drawn. Okay, so that was similar to the way you were doing things in Lab 2 with g.fillRect and g.drawOval and all that kind of thing, g.setColor. Okay, so we'll have a draw method where we can do that. And then there also will be what's called a toString method, which will return a text string that shows the values of the property. So we can see what are the values of the properties of this object. Okay, so what I'm going to do in the next video is take my Lab 2 and add an object class, a class called lollipop tree, and then we'll be able to have a forest of trees very easily instead of having to do all the math in our head. Okay?